You don't have to hurt anyone to make them hate you. All it takes is for you to grow, for you to evolve beyond the version of yourself they were comfortable with, for you to do the inner work they keep avoiding, and suddenly your existence is a mirror they can't stand to look into. There's something people won't tell you when they see you as a threat. They'll smile in your face, but every move you make threatens their illusion of control. And here's the part that stings. They won't try to beat you. They'll try to erase you. Stay with me, because this video might shift how you see the strange silence, the backhanded compliments, the sudden tension you've been ignoring. By the end, you won't just know who sees you as a threat. You'll understand why. And if you've ever felt the weight of being underestimated, resented, or excluded for simply becoming more of yourself, this one will hit. Let's talk about the emotional warfare that doesn't show up in words. It shows up in distance, in discomfort, in subtle sabotage. These are 5 signs someone sees you as a threat and quietly wants you gone. 1. They pretend your growth doesn't exist. The people who once praised you may now act like they don't even see you. Not because you've done something wrong, but because you've outgrown the version of yourself they were most comfortable controlling. You start waking up early. You stop complaining. You shift your focus inward. You get sharper, mentally, physically, spiritually. And what do? They squint like they can't recognize you anymore. They act like nothing's changed. Or worse, they tell you you've changed, like it's a crime. Here's the uncomfortable truth. When people pretend your growth doesn't exist, it's because they feel it too much. They just can't admit it. See, your growth, especially the kind they never saw coming, doesn't just inspire people. It confronts them. It reminds them of their own stagnation, their own excuses, the version of themselves they were supposed to be by now, but never became. So instead of clapping for your discipline, they call it obsession. Instead of recognizing your progress, they say you got lucky. Instead of acknowledging your transformation, they reduce you to the past they still need to believe is true. You are the evidence they've been avoiding, the mirror they never wanted held up, the proof that it was possible. They just didn't act. Let me ask you something. Have you ever made a breakthrough, only to feel more alone afterward? Have you ever achieved something that should have brought celebration, but all you got was silence? That silence is not neutral. It's heavy, intentional. It's a way of saying, go back, you're becoming too much. And you want to give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they're busy, maybe they didn't notice, maybe you're just overthinking. But deep down you know when someone is making an effort to stay blind, because your light makes them squint. Here's the Stoic truth you need to hold on to. What others fail to acknowledge says nothing about your worth, but it says everything about their fear. Some people can only love you as long as you stay beneath them. The moment you rise, spiritually, emotionally, professionally, you trigger the insecurities they buried instead of healed. And their way of dealing with it isn't to grow too. It's to ignore your growth like it never happened. But here's where it gets dangerous. If you're not careful, you'll start shrinking yourself back down just to keep the peace. You'll start second-guessing your own momentum. You'll dial it back, not because you want to, but because you can feel their energy pulling you down. Don't fall for it. You're not too much. You're just no longer easy to predict. You've stopped living in the old story they wrote for you, and now they're lost in a narrative where they're no longer the main character. So what do you do when they pretend your growth doesn't exist? You keep growing anyway. Louder, calmer, brighter. Because real growth doesn't need applause. It just needs consistency. And the ones meant to rise with you, they'll see it. They'll speak on it. They'll grow with you, not resist you. So the next time you notice the silence after your success, don't mistake it for a lack of impact. Sometimes the quietest rooms are the ones most shaken by your presence. Now that we've uncovered this, let's go one level deeper, because sometimes the ones who can't celebrate your growth will disguise their resentment as help. Let me show you how they do it in sign 2. Bottom of form 2. They offer you advice that leads nowhere. Not everyone who gives you advice wants to see you win. Some just want to slow you down without looking like the villain. It sounds helpful, it sounds wise, but if you step back and listen closely, it's just noise. Noise dressed up as wisdom. Words meant to stall, not guide. Let me explain. You decide to start a business. They say, "Are you sure that's stable?" You decide to work on your body. They say, "Just don't overdo it." You set boundaries. They say, "You've changed." At face value, it feels like care, but emotionally, it's directionless concern, the kind that keeps you small and unsure. This is the emotional fog people create when your discipline starts making them uncomfortable. And here's where it gets deep. People rarely tell you directly, "Don't grow. That's too obvious." Instead, they hand you vague warnings, passive detours, and unclear reasons to stop moving forward. Just be careful. What if it doesn't work out? Don't you want to enjoy life too? Watch that last one, because enjoy life often becomes a euphemism for stay average with me. Let me ask you this. Has someone ever discouraged you, but with a smile? Have they ever masked their fear as advice, so they could feel better about staying stuck? If the advice doesn't point you forward, if it doesn't clarify your direction, if it doesn't energize your next move, it's not advice, it's a leash, a soft-tied tether around your ambition, dressed up like support. And here's where Stoicism hits hard. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." That applies to what you hear too. Not every voice deserves a seat at your decision table, especially those whose words are laced with subtle fear. Fear that you'll go further than them. Fear that your results will reflect their inaction. Fear that your courage will reveal their comfort zone. See, people like this don't want you to fail, but they also don't want you to succeed in ways that make them feel left behind. So they give you comfortable, convenient advice. Take it slow. Don't be too ambitious. Don't forget where you came from. Let me tell you something. You can honor where you came from and still move forward. You can be grounded in humility and still strive relentlessly. But their advice isn't about balance. It's about resistance. It's about keeping you relatable, about making sure your growth doesn't shine too bright. And if you're not aware of it, you'll start following it. Not because it's right, but because it's familiar. Because deep down, it's easier to stay in the middle than to risk outgrowing the people around you. But here's your reminder. Real advice doesn't make you smaller. It makes your path clearer. So start listening for the pattern. If their guidance leaves you confused, hesitant, or afraid to leap, that's not wisdom. That's emotional sabotage in slow motion. Pause and reflect for a second. Who gives you advice that leaves you doubting yourself more than before you spoke to them? Whose voice causes friction in your gut, but you still keep listening out of loyalty? You don't owe your future to people who can't see it. Now here's where it gets even more subtle, because once the advice doesn't work, they'll move to something darker. Isolation, strategic exclusion, making sure you're the last to know, the first to be forgotten. Let's talk about that in sign 3. 3. They include everyone except you. There's a certain kind of silence that doesn't happen by accident. It's the silence of being excluded, overlooked, intentionally left out. You see the group hanging out, but you weren't invited. You hear about the meeting, but no one thought to loop you in. You scroll, and there they are, laughing, planning, connecting, without you. And suddenly, your mind goes searching for reasons. Maybe they forgot. Maybe I was busy. Maybe it's not that deep, but deep down, you feel it. Not just the absence, but the deliberateness of it. Because this isn't just forgetfulness, it's social subtraction, and it usually begins when your presence starts making others uncomfortable. When your growth, your clarity, your energy starts to disrupt the emotional hierarchy they were used to. You used to play the role, the quiet one, the agreeable one, the one who didn't take up too much space. But now you're more grounded, more focused, less accessible to the old dynamics. And that shift, it unsettles them, because when someone sees you as a threat, they don't always confront you. They just start erasing you. Not loudly, not with conflict, but with absence. They don't attack you. They just stop including you and let you figure it out for yourself. That's emotional manipulation in its most passive form, and it leaves no fingerprints, just distance. Let me ask you something. Have you ever walked into a room and felt like the atmosphere changed, but no one said anything? Have you ever discovered plans, conversations, or opportunities after they already happened, and they forgot to tell you? That's not just coincidence. It's calculated invisibility. It's an attempt to shrink your influence by starving you of connection, because as long as they can keep you on the edge of the circle, they can pretend your light doesn't reach the center. And here's what hits even harder. They do this not because you're weak, but because you've become harder to control. Stoicism teaches us to remain unmoved by the actions of others, but it doesn't teach us to ignore what those actions mean. You don't need everyone to invite you, but you do need to pay attention to who consistently chooses not to. Sometimes the people who once clapped for you are the same people trying to close doors behind your back because you've stopped needing them. And nothing threatens the fragile ego more than someone who outgrows the group without begging for permission. Here's the emotional paradox. They exclude you hoping you'll come crawling back, hoping you'll ask, "What did I do wrong?" But when you don't, when you keep rising, unbothered, that's when their resentment deepens. So what should you do? Don't chase inclusion. Chase alignment. If being left out brings you closer to your purpose, that's not rejection. That's redirection. Let them have their circles. Let them whisper and meet and move without you, because anything you lose by standing in your power was never meant to stay. Think of someone right now. Someone who used to be close, but now treats you like a ghost in a room full of people. Ask yourself, is this distance because you stopped caring, or because they did? Is this exclusion punishment or protection? The answer may not be easy, but it will be freeing. And now, let's talk about what happens when they don't just leave you out. They wait for you to stumble. They secretly want you to fall, so they can feel tall again. Let's get into that next. Sign 4. They celebrate your mistakes more than your wins. 4. They celebrate your mistakes more than your wins. Some people don't clap when you win, but the moment you stumble, they light up. Not always with words. Sometimes just with energy, with timing, with that tone in their voice that says, "I knew it." They don't openly root against you. No, that would reveal too much. Instead, they sit patiently, smiling, waiting for you to mess up, so they can feel comfortable again. Let's call it what it is. Emotional opportunism. They don't hate your success. They just can't handle what it reveals about them. And when you fall, it's relief, because your fall means they don't have to look at themselves so closely. Your failure resets the playing field in their mind. It makes you relatable again. It makes them feel not so behind. It feeds a narrative they need to stay emotionally afloat. See, they're not that great after all. Let me ask you, have you ever noticed someone go silent when you succeeded, but suddenly over-involved when something went wrong? That's not support. That's a power shift. See, when you're growing, you disrupt the emotional equilibrium they've built their identity around. Your wins expose their delays. Your clarity threatens their confusion. Your momentum pokes holes in the excuses they've been telling themselves for years. So they wait, not for your victory, but for your vulnerability. And when it shows up, they pounce, disguised as concern. I knew you were doing too much. Maybe next time you'll slow down. I just didn't want to say anything before. Notice this, they never had advice when things were going right. But now that you've hit a bump, suddenly, they're wise. Suddenly, they've got all the answers you should have followed. That's not reflection. It's retaliation, dressed in fake compassion. Stoicism teaches us to be indifferent to praise and blame, to stay level in both success and failure. But it also teaches us to observe patterns, because who celebrates your stumbles often reveals who was threatened by your strength all along. Here's what hurts. Sometimes it's the people closest to you, the ones you thought were safe, the ones you used to share everything with. They don't cheer when you rise, because your rising means they have to rise too, and they're not ready for that. So when you fall, they finally breathe again. They feel taller, not because they grew, but because you bent. Let me remind you of something. Your mistakes don't erase your growth. They reveal your depth. And anyone who needs your fall to feel tall was never standing on solid ground to begin with. Close your eyes for a second. Think of a recent loss, mistake or failure you experienced. Now, who showed up the loudest when you were down? And where were they when you were rising? This is emotional X-ray vision, and once you have it, you'll never unsee it. Now here's what happens when even that's not enough for them. When they've minimized your growth, disguised their fear as advice, excluded you, and smiled when you tripped. Their next move, they silently start competing with you, but not to grow, to outperform, to win a game you never signed up for. Let's go into that now. Sign 5. They start competing with you silently. 5. They start competing with you silently. They copy your habits. Suddenly they're reading the same books, starting the same projects, but not to learn, to outperform. And they'll never say it out loud, but everything becomes a silent scoreboard. Who's more admired? Who's more disciplined? Who's winning? It's not admiration. It's imitation, laced with envy, because you became a measuring stick they never asked for, but now can't ignore. People rarely hate what they don't secretly wish they had the courage to become. Think of someone in your life right now, someone whose energy shifted when you started evolving, whose support turned into silence, whose praise became passive aggression. Are they threatened, or are you simply outgrowing them? Are they distant because you changed, or because they didn't? Be honest. Then let that honesty guide your boundaries. Here's what Stoicism teaches us. You are not responsible for how your growth makes others feel, but you are responsible for protecting your peace when their fear turns into hostility. The more you rise, the more you'll disturb those who've chosen comfort over courage. That's not your burden. It's just the cost of becoming who you were meant to be. So if they want you gone, let them go first. You've got better places to be. Stay steady, stay intentional, and protect your light, even when it blinds others. I'll see you in the next one.